with Julien today, which will soon become evident. He's from Australia, so we'll talk a bit about that. Hi, Julien.
Hi, Alex. How you going?
Hi, all good. Yeah. What's happening in Australia at the moment? What's the state of our industry like?
Yeah, it's evolving. We're in Australia. We're grappling probably with privacy and the implications of some new regulations. So Australia is, obviously companies that work in Australia that are subject to GDPR, if they're a global company, have been grappling with that a little bit over the last few years. The Australian privacy principles is an equivalent kind of standard, and that's coming, or it's getting an update this year, and we're expecting some, well, maybe not GDPR scale fines and penalties, but certainly more than there has been in the past. So things like privacy and PII data management and governance and compliance and all of those things are big topics for businesses down under, I guess.
Yeah.
Is the down under. So that's a big topic, and that leads obviously into Data Vault discussions a lot because of some of its core capabilities. But AI is big as well.
Everyone's talking about it.
That. Yeah. So they're probably the big topics. Data quality never goes away. It's that inevitable challenge. I think until all systems produce all their own data without human input, we're still going to have data quality issues. They're the sort of main topics. We're obviously doing lots of Data Vault training and helping lots of businesses, some really large businesses for our country anyway, taking on Data Vault as their approach to managing. And I think in part that's it's nice to have some structure to follow, but there's also, because they want to be ready for AI, and there's some understanding of some of the benefits of that. So there's a broad range.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people are seeing how data governance, data quality are more important than ever with AI. AI needs a lot of good data quality feeding into it, and a lot of companies are kind of struggling with bad data quality. How do they structure their data? We've got 30 companies that we need to integrate. How do we do that? And a lot of people are finding Data Vault and going, well, this looks like it might do.
Yeah, I think it has value because there's a big body of knowledge there to follow. So you're unlikely to sort of paint yourself into a corner and have nowhere to go. And, there's people have sort of trod that path before and worked out the pitfalls and the right direction to take. And so I think it adds lots of value, supports architects to make good decisions. I'm not a kind of a true believer that Data Vault solves every problem, but I think it gives a lot of support to architects and helps with a really good direction on what's the best path to take to solve the problem that they're facing. So
it forms a good foundation for everything else to happen on top of it, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. And look, the AI thing is really interesting. I was sitting on a roundtable in late December. There was a lot of discussion from a lot of companies that were on that roundtable, and I think we had almost 20 organisations, and they were all wanting advice on how to get started, how to embark.
Yep.
There was only one organisation on the table that had actually done anything, and that had a go at an app and decided before releasing it to consumers that it was actually too risky and killed the project because they had transactional data and stuff being accessed by it. And so
AI.
Yeah, so they just decided for them, they weren't ready to do that. And it probably wasn't the best choice of target for their first go. And that was kind of the consensus of that day was what AI project can they take on as a good way to learn how to do the projects, how to learn the technology, how to understand the approaches. And really the consensus was focus on things like data quality. Is there ways that you can do an AI project that'll actually improve your data quality or your data classification, improve some of your governance aspects, because that creates a better foundation for your future AI projects. Yeah. So there's really nice overlap, I think, there. And I think in the not too distant future, we'll see a lot of organizations embarking on customer facing or mission critical AI projects. But for now, it's that slow build. And I think there's a really strong place for Data Vault to play in that realm, especially when it gets to kind of mission critical applications.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think I'm not sure if you saw, we recently had a user group meetup with Francesco Pupini.
I didn't see
about LLMs talking to your data. A lot of companies are putting chatbots on things and getting the less technical people in the company to kind of interact with data without having to query it through an LLM and all that kind of stuff. And we're seeing a lot of those little sort of, they're almost like microservices back in the day, kind of popping up. And how much value do those really bring?
Yeah,
is the question, I think.
And I think there's like that the RAG implementation, so retrieval augmented generation. I think there's value in that if you need something that helps you read and summarize information. So if you've got 100 manuals and you need to read all those manuals, what a great application for that kind of thing. But if you need to then blend that information with some actual facts, maybe sensor readings or account balances or pay details or other HR stuff that's quite sensitive, then you really want to make sure you know how you're going to blend those two things together. Make sure that you understand who can access it and those sorts of things. So I think there's a long way to run on this stuff. But I think organizations that have invested in data quality and governance and especially a data vault that is managing PII and other sensitive data well, they've set themselves up with the right foundation for it.
Yeah, I think so. We're seeing a lot of people, as you say, starting off doing projects, finding that they don't have maybe the maturity that they need to do it. They kind of jumped on the bandwagon, as it were. They don't have that foundation. Now what do? We spent all this money so far. Yeah, we've seen it. I'm sure you've already seen that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a bit of a hype cycle. Like there's organizations that haven't even really sorted out their BI, and they're thinking they're going to implement AI.
They're not doing what they're currently doing well enough. Like, how are they going to get to that? Yeah.
And they haven't allocated the funding they need to actually build a proper modern data platform, that combines the features of a lake and a warehouse or a lake house, and has good governance and has metadata management and has some automation. And if they haven't done that stuff, how are they going to keep control of an AI project or a, and I'd be terrified if I was on the board of a company that was heading that way, and where you're about to release an AI that's customer facing, and you didn't have that level of understanding of your internal data, you're opening yourself up to huge risk. In going back to where we started, the implications of exposing people's personal information, in Europe right now is huge and soon to be in Australia as well. So what a lot of risk to take on.
Yeah, so the answer is definitely not, okay, let's quickly build a data vault, integrate everything, point it and limit it, because then you've got all the data integrated in one place and it can see everything.
Yeah,
you need something else.
Right. Yeah, we've got some partners we've been working with who've been focusing on that authentication bit, passing the credentials of the person asking the question all the way through to the LLM that's accessing the data. And that may be a chain of, in this agentic workflow scenario, you could have 10 different AI bots in that flow before it gets to the one that puts a request to the vault or to the database. So that request needs to be, in the context of who's actually asked the question, not just what can this bot access. So it's an interesting puzzle to solve, and there's some good answers to it, I think, already being formed. But that's, you'd want to make sure you had that right, wouldn't you? Before.
No, exactly, and especially, it's died down in recent years or so, but especially with things like data mesh, if you've got distributed teams all trying to do their own AI LLM stuff, you need some kind of overarching governance structure to make sure all of those different teams are doing things within the restrictions and regulations.
There's some stuff in data mesh I really like, and some stuff I really dislike. I think that the idea of well-defined data products is great.
Yes, absolutely.
You have a really well-defined data product, and you've got governance and quality and other things wrapped around it. Well, then you can trust that, and that's a great target for an LLM to access. But the idea that you're going to have distributed teams all, modeling and integrating data to some standard, even using Data Vault, you can get variations in the way people model the same problem out, right? So I think that there's challenges with it there as well, and I think it is really good in what it talks about with data products, and I think adopting that and making that sort of the basis, what data product you need, what's the use case, what's the value of the use case. Okay, do the work.
Exactly, yeah, and I mean the data product that's predefined. It's been through all of the discussions necessary in a large organization to get it to that point. For people to be able to start using it, maybe that's the thing you point the LLM at.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
100% agree. You guys know this better than I would even, that you can automate a lot of this stuff now. Like we've got a lot of automation in the Data Vault space, and we've talked about that. But also in testing, there's automated testing we've come leaps and bounds in.
Absolutely.
And I think that's really important. You need to do the things that give you the confidence and also give you the speed. So obviously not handwriting your load code, not handwriting all your tests. All of these things that remove the manual steps. They don't just give you speed; they give you consistency, and so it gives you that trust in that final data product that. Yeah, then you can point an LLM at it and you maybe get the right answers. There's one other probably aspect to it. We've done a bit of work with the IBM team on their way they package up some of the LLMs, and they have some of their own and some of the big ones, the big open source ones and stuff. But they have a cool tool that puts guardrails around what the LLM can do, and I know there's other software vendors as well.
Moving very fast at the moment.
That idea though of wrapping the guardrails around what the LLM can do is a really good idea.
Absolutely.
But I think you also need that protection of having wrapped the security and the governance around the data, so that you've got some redundancy in that process maybe, and then obviously an instance of an AI supervising what's going on is a good idea as well.
Yeah, you have AI supervising AI. I mean,
who's watching the watcher?
Yeah, there's lots of jokes about and worries about us getting replaced, but I think it's going to be a while until we get to that point, if at all.
Yeah,
it is moving very fast, but we still need humans in the loop.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I think we just have, and we have so much to do. Like we have more projects requiring more people than we have. So there is a lot to do. If every organization wants to leverage this stuff, then there is a huge amount of demand for data engineers and good data modelers. Because, I think in the data lake, start of the data lake era, if that's I don't know if it was really an era, but, the start of that time, we had lots of comments of people saying, I never want to model data again. Like, well,
it's the wrong thing to throw out.
Yeah, we've come full circle because, in fact, what you really need right now is people to model your data so that you actually have, an integrated view that's consistent and governed. Because it's now not a human making a decision: is this thing true? Is it of adequate quality? The machine is going to deliver up what the machine has. So
yeah, I mean, we were talking a bit off podcast earlier about how. LLMs, I mean, it's in the name, large language model. They need something they can look at and understand in a semantic way, right? So having something like a data vault in there behind the scenes, and therefore something that has to have been modeled in advance, you have to have people who understand the business and people to create that model in the first place, and that can't be done with AI 100%.
Yeah, I think the large language models are amazing, and I think that it's great. What they can, and the visual ones, DALL-E and those sorts of things as well. Very creative, but it is trawling through the large language models, trawling through and reading and comprehending a huge amount of text. But it isn't dealing with, with the transactions of a financial system or the readings of 1,000 sensors off an electrical generation plant or something like that.
You need something between that and the LLM.
Yeah, you got to connect it up because I mean we do a fair bit of work in the asset intensive sort of space, and if you're trying to support an engineer, then he doesn't just want to know what does the manual say around fixing this bit of equipment. He wants to know what process should he follow, and he also wants to know what were the last temperature readings and the last sensor readings and what was the trend. You can't generate all of that. You can generate some of it, and the other stuff you need to go and get the fact.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting world.
Would it be fair to say from your experience, LLMs are kind of good at taking things that are there and summarizing them and interpreting them in a certain way, but not so good at doing the new stuff yet, the stuff we haven't thought of?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. They're replicating things that they have lots of examples of.
Yes.
You know, that's what they're good at, and you can influence them with, with a RAG model. You can feed it some specific knowledge, and it'll incorporate that into its learning. And I think that's really clever, but I don't think that it's at the same level yet of capability for the things that are mission critical. I think that you still need a human in the loop. You still need some governance and other things in place so that you can either trust what it's telling you to do as the next step, or you can trust the recommendations it's making or the predictions or whatever else. Otherwise, it's just another piece of information that's unvalidated.
Yeah. We're talking off podcast earlier about how latest generation, is creating a chain of steps to reach a goal, and sometimes it's lying to get to that goal, and which is unfortunately that's kind of what humans do. It's just replicating human behavior.
Well, what do you expect? You teach something to do things the way we do it, I guess.
Yeah.
But I find that terrifying. Because you kind of then just it's building in confirmation bias or something, isn't it? It's it's giving it a whole bunch of preconceived biases. I want you to produce this answer for me. What value is that?
It's just going to say okay.
yeah. How about I just not bother and you just make up your own answer then?
Yeah.
So it's if these things are going to work well for us, especially if they're going to make businesses more profitable, more efficient. All those sorts of things that we're trying to aim for, then you have to deal in reality. You have to deal in facts. You can't just have an LLM support your preconceived notion. Especially, that's great if your preconceived notion is accurate. If it's not, then you want to know. Ignorance isn't bliss, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, it's the stories a few years ago about how they were doing some of this inside Amazon. And how it was, they saw a racial bias in the machine learning. Well, it wasn't LLMs back then, but machine learning.
Yeah.
Going, okay, well, we've seen this from these kind of people and these kind of people, and it created biases for gender, and it's not good.
No, we need, and that's, I think that in part, if I recall rightly, that part of that biases were just embedded in the data sets it's trained on. And so it kind of picks up on that, even if people have gone to the effort to try and remove it.
And LLMs are doing the same thing.
Yeah, that's right. And then if you're designing it so that it gives you the goal that you want, then it's got a whole bunch of biases it can lean on. Well, then it's just going to give you the result you want rather than maybe the uncomfortable truth that you needed to hear. So.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. One other thing, actually, and this is a bit out of left field, so apologies, but I saw an article the other day about how all of the energy required for an LLM to work and all the water it uses, like the environmental impact, is actually not good.
Yeah,
I don't feel good about that.
No,
what's going to happen?
Yeah. I know we certainly need to understand that better. I also actually the other day really just twigged on that for the first time. I kind of knew that data centers were a big draw.
They were already bad enough.
Yeah. But then you think about the density. NVIDIA, what an amazing ride they've had, and they're going to keep going, and they're producing huge amounts of equipment that's all going to require powering.
All the silicon as well, so all the mining and
So it's definitely a draw on resources and on power. And I think our experience in Australia is energy pricing is just going through the roof. We're having a chat offline earlier about the the uptake of rooftop solar in Australia, because it's costing a huge amount. If Australia was to deploy a whole bunch more data centers, that's only going to make the problem worse. We already have some places that are experiencing brownouts in the middle of summer because of the air conditioning and all of those sorts of things. So, and I anecdotally I heard that I think it was Microsoft is building a huge number of new data centers. Like that's one of their major pieces of business right now is the amount of new data centers they're building for AI. So there's definitely if we're trying to aim for some sort of net zero or even just reduction in carbon, depending on your opinion on those sorts of things. I mean, if we're trying to reduce our impact on the climate from that stuff, you've got to find another way to power these things, don't you?
It's just I just thought it was an interesting thing to think about.
It may put a limit on it, I guess. Like if it reaches a certain cost to run the LLM query, then at what point does it become cost prohibitive to do? There might have to be some actual analysis on what tasks actually really benefit from, and I don't think we're at the point of knowing that yet, but maybe there'll be a whole bunch of tasks where you go, it's actually not worth the cost to replicate all of that process that already exists and takes only one person to run. Like do I do all the work to build the replacement and then to power the replacement? There might be some level of trade-off that organisations will go, well, I'll do these things, but I won't do that.
Starting to need to prioritize even more, and then there's going to be more need for business analysts understanding what questions we need to answer, what will actually help the business, and more need for data modeling at that point.
And it does feel like a bit of an arms race at the moment. Develop at all costs. A little bit of Apollo era kind of thinking, maybe.
Just throwing things and seeing what sticks.
Yeah, especially with large countries and large governments, trying to win dominance over AI and other things. So, I can't see it slowing down, but I think there's definitely going to be some consideration at some point.
There'll be a natural limit.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, I guess it's like battery technology and everything else. All our systems become more efficient. We can do more with less, and then we do more. So no, it's really interesting.
I just wanted to bring in another kind of angle there because there's so much to think about. There's business, people, the whole triangle of process, people, technology, and then there's environment, and there's lots of other bits. Yeah.
Let me ask you a question then. So if you're talking to an organisation now and they're saying, what do we need to do now so that we're in a good position, what advice do you give them?
It's a good question. I think the priority has to be getting your ducks in a row, as it were. Is actually it's the governance and the data quality. You need that as a precursor to doing anything, even if it's even if it's not AI, even if it's just a dashboard to give someone. You need to have the right data in the right place, of the right quality, and with the right restrictions around it to provide to the right people. You have to have that regardless.
Yeah, I agree.
So I think that's the advice there.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we on our website we released a self-service data maturity assessment. So anyone can jump onto the Ignition website and have a go at that. And it's a reduced version of the consulting service that we do when we're helping people develop their strategy. But that gives you a bit of a kind of view of things to think about. And if they go through the process, they get a AI readiness score and those sorts of things. Very much focused on all those topics you're just talking about. The data quality and you're understanding your business and understanding your risks to PII and privacy and other things. It's and even just data classification. And I think there's lots of small projects that people can start off that are inwardly focused. Like they're things that are going to improve their data quality or their data governance, and end up with a better foundation. Yeah. And then once they've learnt what these AI projects actually look like, sky's the limit, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, we have like an internal knowledge base where we have
Yeah.
our learning material for our engineers,
Yeah.
things like that, and that was something that you could quite easily build something
Yeah.
around.
Yeah. Absolutely. Oh yeah, throw an LLM over a wiki, and then have it be a kind of a service agent.
Yeah.
Seems like a really
Actually a very good use case.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the ones we're seeing that is delivering value as a quick win at the moment.
Yeah.
For sure.
No, I agree.
Yeah. Great. Well, I think there was a lot there.
Yeah.
So enjoy listening to all of that. Thank you very much. Is there anything else you wanted to add?
That was just a pleasure coming on. I'm happy to jump on and chat some more.
Great.
Yeah. Thanks for having us. Oh, and obviously we're going to be doing a fair bit more with you guys. So hopefully we'll be chatting again soon.